Hey, folks, welcome into the It's Official podcast. Jeremy Plonk here representing First Bet and Express Bet. Time to talk all the big newsmakers in horse racing as we do each and every Tuesday here on the podcast. We'll get into the hot topics of the week, including opening weekend at Santa Anita, Breeders' Cup preps up and down the coast to coast across the country. A lot of great racing to get to and some in the rearview mirror from Parx over the past week. As we do each and every week here on the podcast, we kick things off with the Goosebump Award. The Jeff Siegel Goosebump Award started this year as Jeff wanted to honor the horse of the week who got us most excited, got us up out of our chair, and got the goosebumps on our arms and necks standing up. Well, special edition of the Goosebump Award this week. As many of you know, Jeff has been battling some serious illness over the past several months. He's got a horse running on Friday at Santa Anita, and that's the Goosebump Award winner as I get choked up here just thinking about it. Surfing USA debuts in Friday's third race at Santa Anita, a horse Jeff bought with his partner Eric Sonheimer at Ocala in April this year, an $80,000 son of Rock Your World in the career debut. Surfing USA, race number 3 this Friday at Santa Anita on the opening day card. I can think of no better medicine and I can think of no better outcome than for Jeff Siegel to get a winner on Friday at the Great Race Place. So our Goosebump Award winner this week hasn't run yet. We're a little off script, but it is going to be Surfing USA. Let's get this one home for Leonard Powell, Jockey Juan Hernandez with the rail in Friday's third race at Santa Anita. Won't be a dry eye in the place if we can get this horse home. Surfing USA, this week's Goosebump Award winner in the future. Now, let's look back to last week's Goosebump Award winner. The horse who caught the most attention to me and really got me most excited to see was in the St. Louis Derby of all places. We hadn't seen Disco Time, a horse who started his career 3 for 3 since winning the Lecomte Stakes back in January. A quote minor setback, according to Brad Cox, had him out for the past 6 months or so, but he got back on the beam and Disco Time looked really good in doing so, winning at Fairmount Park.
On the front, no doubt about it, Disco Time, even money, the favorite, just rolling right along. Half mile in 47 and 2. So the speed is on. It's Disco Time and Excite. They have separated themselves, and here come the late runners. Hypnus has taken over third, dropping out as the maiden Spellmaker. But we're down to Disco Time, who's out to a 3.5 length lead. They're done with the turn now. It's in the rearview mirror, and they passed the 330 pull. And they're down into the stretch run here in the St. Louis Derby. It's Disco Time. Florent Giroux in complete command from the barn of Brad Cox. And it'll be Disco Time to oblige as your even money favorite, a gate-to-wire winner of the St. Louis Derby. Hypnus, a good second.
It was good to see him back, and it was good to see Disco Time maybe better than when he left. What next for this 3-year-old by not this time? Hard to say. Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile might be asking a little bit too much. There's not a lot left on the 3-year-old calendar. You think about the end of the year for the straight 3-year-olds, the Grade 1 Malibu at Santa Anita, if they cut back to 7 furlongs. But they went long in the return race. Probably they'll go long in the next race as well. You got some older horse races in Kentucky coming up. You could look at the Fayette at the Keeneland meet or wait until after Thanksgiving for the Clark Handicap if you want to take on older horses. Again, 3s and up in those races, perhaps at Keeneland at Churchill Downs. I don't know where we're going to see Disco Time next, but he's a horse who missed all of the Triple Crown Series, missed all of the summer, back here, and he looks to be a horse who's got a future if he can stay sound. I really like the performance last out there from Disco Time in the St. Louis Derby over the weekend. What a good year for this 3-year-old crop for the sire, not this time. Final Gambit, of course, won the Jeff Ruby this spring. Magnitude ran second in the PA Derby, won the Risen Star earlier this year at Fairgrounds. Goal-oriented. There's been some good ones. Troubleshooting on the turf. Won a big 7-figure race at Kentucky Downs. So a really good 3-year-old crop from not this time. Disco Time might be the most talented of all those. Now 4 for 4 lifetime. Talking about the 3-year-old crop, let's go to the big headline race last week. It was the Pennsylvania Derby at Parx, and Baeza got the victory, and he just punctuated the top 3-year-olds in the country. He's kind of the end of the sentence. Who are the top 3-year-olds? Sovereignty, journalism, Baeza, period. That's the punctuation. Can he put an exclamation on his season in the Breeders' Cup Classic? That we'll have to find out. But Baeza did what he was supposed to do in the Pennsylvania Derby and did it pretty well.
Continuing to press the issue, David of Athens, goal-oriented. He holds his spot in third. Then it's Magnitude to his outside. Gosger right in between horses. Big Truz. They continue on 46-3 with less than a half mile to go. And So Sandy has been resilient, but he has had plenty of company. Goal-oriented on the outside ups the tempo. In between horses, David of Athens. He's persistent as well. On the outside, Gosger is beginning to move, and Baeza, he's gotten the cue. He's making up ground with every stride. Goal-oriented has taken the lead as they go around the far turn in the Pennsylvania Derby. Looming on the outside, Baeza, he's continuing to rally, and it's goal-oriented who hits the top of the stretch with the lead. Goal-oriented, Baeza continuing to charge to his outside. So Sandy, he's not done, he's fighting on. Baeza up to confront goal-oriented. Goal-oriented is fighting on gamely. Magnitude's on the scene late. It is Baeza who is kicking clear. There's a 16th left, and Baeza, Magnitude flying late, but Baeza gets his moment in the sun in the Pennsylvania Derby. Baeza over Magnitude, goal-oriented. And a final time, 148 flat.
Professional, finished up well, exactly what you wanted to see from Baeza in the Pennsylvania Derby, and not too much where he laid it all over the track, and then you think maybe he wouldn't peak towards the Breeders' Cup. This was a really good race for Baeza coming off his race in the Haskell. You think about his record this year. He's 0 for 3 straight up against Sovereignty. He's 0 for 3 straight up against Journalism. He got away from those two and did what he was supposed to do here, and that is to be complimented. Final 3 furlongs at about 37-1 for him here at Parx. Really came home nicely. He's only 2 for 8 lifetime. He's earned $1.5 million now. But again, a lot of those defeats at the hooves of both Journalism and Sovereignty, and there's no shame in that. 7 straight top 3 finishes, most of those in stakes company for him of late. The one thing about Baeza, and also really we talk about this with Journalism a little bit this year, there is no break in his form cycle. He hit the track with his first career race December 1st. So, 6-8 works before that, 2 months or so on the track before the debut. He has not had a break. He has run straight through with no break in the form cycle. Does he have another big race left in him to the Breeders' Cup? That'll be a question. Journalism was in the same boat. He even debuted a little bit sooner than that and had no break whatsoever and was training all the way straight through. Remember, with Sovereignty, he had a break after his 2-year-old season before coming back as a 3-year-old, and that makes a little bit difference in how horses cycle up the races. When we talk form cycle, it's kind of like your schedule. What race and what pattern are you since you've had your last break? There has been no break at all for Baeza since, again, coming to the track last November, late October. So he's basically run he'll have run a year straight through in his same form cycle when he gets to the Breeders' Cup. There is a little bit of a break for Journalism after the Pacific Classic that he ran in August, and that gives him a longer layoff between the Pacific Classic and then the Breeders' Cup Classic. He didn't take any serious time off. He's back on the workout tab now. But again, at least a little bit of a break for Journalism may be helpful as they get towards the end of this 3-year-old season. As for Sovereignty, again, he had that winter break last year through the spring. They didn't run it all 3 legs of the Triple Crown. He's been judiciously campaigned, and you would expect Journalism to be at his absolute best for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Nothing about him would seem to be over the top. So in order to beat Sovereignty, I might have misspoke there and said Journalism, but in order to beat Sovereignty in the Breeders' Cup Classic, one of these 3-year-olds is going to have to do something they haven't been able to do to this point amongst when you look at Journalism and you look at Baeza. 3 head-to-head matchups against Sovereignty when we talk about Baeza. Baeza versus Sovereignty, he's over 3. The margins, 1 length, 6.5 lengths, and 1 3/4 lengths. Against Journalism, 0 for 3. 3 different races. The margins were 3/4 of a length, 3.5 lengths, and an X. So he's been closer, obviously, to Journalism than he has been Sovereignty. He's 0 for 6 in those 2 combined matchups. The margin, 13 3/4 lengths. He's about 2 1/4 lengths behind each of these main rivals if you look at it on average. So Baeza's going to have to make up at least 2 lengths on both of those rivals in order to win the Breeders' Cup, not necessarily even talking about what the older horses are going to bring to the party. And there's a pretty good group of older horses in this year's racing calendar. So it is going to be very tough to see Baeza winning a Breeders' Cup Classic, making up 2 lengths on both of his chief rivals at least, and then taking on the older horses as well. But he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. It was a very good effort in the Pennsylvania Derby, and he punctuates these 3-year-olds. It's an excellent crop. He's just third in the sentence with the period behind it. Baeza behind Journalism and Sovereignty still as we head towards the Breeders' Cup Classic. Now, let's talk more Breeders' Cup and Parx racing from this past weekend. There were a couple big races around the country for the 3-year-old fillies. We saw the Seneca Overnight at Churchill Downs, but more importantly, the Cotillion, grade 1 for the 3-year-old fillies at Parx on the Pennsylvania Derby undercard. Could those 3-year-old fillies step up and take on Torpedo Anna, the reigning horse of the year in the Breeders' Cup Distaff? Well, after what we saw this past weekend, there's nothing out there to scare Anna when it comes to the 3-year-olds. Let's go back and take a look at Clico winning the Cotillion Stakes as Scottish Lassie, Lucara, and Good Cheer all relatively flopped in this. The winners of the Coaching Club Oaks, Acorn, and Kentucky Oaks were taken down in the Cotillion by Clico.
And on the front end, it is Dry Powder. She's running a huge race. Lacara continues to fight on. Clico found her momentum down the center of the track. And our Daydreaming Girl, she is gaining late, flying down the center of the track. Clico with a narrow lead. Our Daydreaming Girl continues to charge. A 16th left. Clico trying to hold off. Dry Powder to the inside, fights on. Clico down to the line. Get that champagne ready. Clico's the winner of the Cotillion. Final time, 1:42.4.
Trainer Brendan Walsh has Clico in fine form. She's won 4 in a row coming out of the Indiana Oaks. Now adds the Cotillion under Irad Ortiz Jr. She bested a group like we talked about who won all the big races, the Acorn, the Coaching Club Oaks, the Kentucky Oaks, but they were spread across the track. There was nothing visually fantastic in this performance to me. I don't see how these 3-year-olds are going to step up and beat the older fillies and mares on the West Coast. Cavalieri for Bob Baffert, an older filly and mare who could be Breeders' Cup Distaff bound. Of course, Torpedo Anna. So it's going to be very tough for these 3-year-old fillies, I think, to match up this year. And last year's 2-year-old champion filly, who we're hoping maybe she could make a dent in this 3-year-old filly crop, Immersive, she just never got underway. We didn't see her until June. She missed all the run-up to the Kentucky Oaks with what they called some bone bruising over the winter, and she came back at Churchill Downs, and the Monomoy Girl ran second. She came back in the Coaching Club Oaks and was a very distant second to Scottish Lassie. So instead of keeping her against top-class company going in the Cotillion, Good Cheer went there for Godolphin and Brad Cox instead. Last week, they had a chance for Immersive to really get it together and really put it together and get right in the Seneca Overnight Stakes at Churchill Downs. Just a $175,000 race. And when you're talking about a champion 2-year-old filly from last year, she should have won this race in a slam dunk. Instead, it was workmanlike.
They roll off the turn. Ivory and Ebony floats Immersive out into the center of the track, but Immersive is now roused back to the lead. Immersive in front for long to go. Ivory and Ebony is proving a tough customer. She's not quite backing down, but Immersive is getting the upper hand in the final 16th, and it will be Immersive. A 2-length winner in the end. Ivory and Ebony made a race of it, but settles for second.
The runner-up there, Ivory and Ebony, is a 5-start runner who broke her maiden last time out. Took 5 tries to break the maiden. For Immersive, a 2-year-old champion last year, this Nyquist filly should have looked much more commanding in this performance. She simply did not. I don't know where she steps up and takes on the older fillies and mares as well. As for this division, it is all about right now, I think, Torpedo Anna. Now, some news and some good well wishes need to go out here to Brian Hernandez Jr., Jockey Brian Hernandez Jr., the rider of Torpedo Anna, as we talk about this distaff division. She's going to need a new jock because Brian Hernandez is on the sidelines. A really tough spill for him on Sunday where Sergeant Garcia had to be euthanized, his mount in that race after a spill. Brian Hernandez out approximately 6 to 8 weeks. Would be miraculous to be back in 6 to 8 weeks, but 7 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a lacerated liver that required a minor surgery earlier this week. Best wishes to Brian Hernandez Jr., who is laid up here. Of course, he would be riding Mystic Dan this weekend at Churchill Downs. We'll talk about that horse in just a little bit. The Derby winner from last year. Torpedo Anna scheduled to run in the Spinster Stakes at Keeneland here in October before heading to the Breeders' Cup. We will have to see who trainer Kenny McPeak names to ride on Torpedo Anna moving forward. As for Mystic Dan, I believe, and some of the others, Julian Leperoux would be a candidate on some of those. Has ridden a lot for Kenny McPeak over the years, but no decision has been made on the riders yet as of this recording of the podcast on Tuesday. For Torpedo Anna, looking forward to the Spinster and the Breeders' Cup, and of course Mystic Dan coming up this weekend. We'll keep the eye on the news wires for that as we look forward, but nothing in the 3-year-old filly division looks like they can step up and warm up Torpedo Anna, who looks to be a standout if not for Cavalieri on the West Coast in the Breeders' Cup Distaff Division. Let's go to our next topic this week on It's Official, talking about those Breeders' Cup preps. They really hit high gear this coming weekend. It's opening day at Santa Anita on Friday. Between Kentucky, New York, and California, we've got a slew of prep races to talk about this coming weekend. Let's just look at it by the numbers. Santa Anita opens on Friday. The first 3 days of racing include 5 major stakes races on Saturday, 2 of them on Sunday. At Belmont at the Big A at Aqueduct, they've got a stakes race, the Bell Dame, on Friday, 5 on Saturday, including the horse you see on the right there, Rebels Romance, going Saturday at Aqueduct in the Joe Hurst Turf Classic, and then 1 stakes race on the card Sunday at the Big A. And then to Churchill Downs on Saturday, a couple stakes races on the card there, the ACAC and the Lucas Classic. Outside of those 3 major thoroughfares, the Delaware Handicap for the Breeders' Cup Distaff Division will be held on Sunday. Sunday also includes Remington Park's Oklahoma Derby Day card, where they've added a Great West Turf Sprint, a 250 grander there. So a couple different races that could have some Breeders' Cup implications, not on the major circuits, but around the country as well. But as for those major circuits and the Breeders' Cup prep races that we have this weekend, look at the stars who are going to come out to shine this weekend. Randomized Grade 1 winner, one of the headliners of a less than stellar edition of the Bell Dame on Friday. Race didn't come up as tough as it has in some past years. Saturday at Belmont at Aqueduct, Rebels Romance. Again, the 2-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf. He's going to get a U.S. prep. He's going against stablemates. He's going against some local stars. But Rebels Romance, the headliner in the Joe Hurst Turf Classic, coming up on Saturday. Lock, the horse who won the Santa Anita Handicap earlier this year, headlines the Woodward Stakes. It could be in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile or Classic division as a major prep there. The Woodward Stakes at 1 1/8 on Saturday at Aqueduct. As for Churchill Downs, the ACAC includes Most Wanted for Brad Cox. Cox also has one of the headliners in the Lucas Classic, the runner Hit Show, who won the Dubai World Cup earlier this year. Mystic Dan in that race, of course, the 2024 Kentucky Derby winner. So you get a Derby winner and a winner of the Dubai World Cup, all in the Lucas Classic. That race at 1 1/8 at Churchill Downs. Lucas Classic could be a prep towards the Breeders' Cup Mile, or a Dirt Mile, or a prep towards the Breeders' Cup Classic, depending where the connections would like to go out of there. At Santa Anita on Saturday, we mentioned 5 major stakes races. Amongst 4 headliners, Johannes. Johannes is running in the City of Hope Mile. This is a horse who got really close to winning the Breeders' Cup Mile last year on the turf at Del Mar, ran 3rd in that race. Johannes making his 2nd start of a very light campaign this year. He's in the City of Hope Mile trying to defend his title. Full Serrano goes in the Goodwood Stakes at Santa Anita on Saturday. Full Serrano, of course, last year won the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Another lightly raced campaign for this John Sadler trainee. Looking forward to seeing him in the Goodwood on Saturday. Brad Cox is going west with First Mission in that Goodwood as well. The Santa Anita Sprint Championship on Sunday, that drew today, expected to get Straight No Chaser, winner of last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint. And then we talked about Cavalieri earlier. This is a horse for trainer Bob Baffert. She's done nothing wrong, but she hasn't been out in a long time. Can one prep get her to the Breeders' Cup Distaff? She's been ultra talented. We'll see if she can get a win off the layoff in the Zenyatta Stakes. That race on Sunday for trainer Bob Baffert. So a lot of big-time stars expected to shine this weekend. Can't wait to see the races around the country. We really got some big races to look at, and we'll review them, of course, next week. We'll handicap a lot of those big stakes races on our Friday podcast when I'm joined by guest handicapper Scott Shapiro. So be sure to check out the First Call podcast each and every Friday. We'll handicap a lot of those stakes races that we previewed here for a brief time, but we'll handicap them in more depth coming up on Friday for sure. If you're gambling on the Santa Anita meet this weekend, we sure hope you do, and do so with First Bet and Express Bet. But a new wager I want to tell you about at Santa Anita this meet, brand new, the Sunset 6. It's a pick 6 that matches the final 3 races on the card each day at Santa Anita, as well as the final 3 races on the card each day at Sister Track Gulfstream Park. So it's each day of racing where both tracks are running. Final 3 on the card at Gulfstream, final 3 on the card at Santa Anita. Low takeout. This is retail only, no call wagering. So the Sunset 6, a pick 6 that you want to just really take a look at each and every racing day, especially if you like to play Gulfstream. Gulfstream and Santa Anita teaming up with this wager. It begins with Friday's opening day card at Santa Anita. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days of racing at the Santa Anita meet here in September. And we are going to see certainly a lot September and October, and we're going to see a lot of those interactive pick sixes intermingling with the card at Gulfstream Park. Final 3 on the card at Gulfstream, final 3 at Santa Anita. No matter how many races are on the card, that will make up the new Sunset 6 pick 6 wager. So be sure to check that out. Let's wrap the podcast up as we do each and every week with our Stars of Tomorrow segment. We're looking for a horse who maybe comes out of the maiden ranks, maybe a 2-year-old, and maybe one who catches your eye. Check all those boxes. The 2-year-old Englishman for Cherie DeVoe looked awfully good on the 19th at Churchill Downs.
At the top of the stretch, Englishman rolls off the turn and is set down for the drive now. Leads by 2. Tagermine is fully extended. Just a couple of reminders for Englishman. And Englishman dashes away. 4 clear, final 16th. And Englishman, after a sharp start, easily put away Tagermine and dazzles on debut.
Really good looking effort there. Cherie DeVoe's got her hands on a good one. $400,000 yearling at the Keeneland September sale. Now a 2-year-old from the first crop of Maxfield. Of course, Maxfield won 8 of 11. Won the Stephen Foster there at Churchill Downs. He won the Clark at Churchill. So there's some pedigree to like things at Churchill. No doubt Englishman sure did. The second dam here, there's a lot of good pedigree to like. All due respect. She was graded stakes placed in the Ballerina. Also going long in the Santa Anita Oaks and the La Troyenne. So she was really good short and long the second dam, all due respect. So there's a shot in here that this one will go on farther than 7 furlong debut. Tough debut distance, and certainly Englishman looked good in doing so. First crop of Maxfield also includes the stakes winner in Southern California, the Cowbred Max Chow. So a very good start to the career for Maxfield, already with 2-year-old winners, a stakes winner, and now one who is kind of on everybody's radar named Englishman. Looks like a potential future stakes winner. Let's review our topics this week on It's Official. We started things off with the Goosebump Award. We kind of split the decision this week. Surfing USA, co-owned by our one and only editor emeritus and founder of this podcast, Jeff Siegel. We're looking for Surfing USA to put a smile on Mr. Siegel's face in race number 3 on Friday at Santa Anita. That being one of our Goosebump Award winners. The other, Disco Time, for winning the St. Louis Derby. Welcome back to that runner, now 4 for 4, and looks sharp in doing so. Baeza punctuates the top 3-year-olds, but he's third in the sentence with a period behind it. A good effort for him in the Pennsylvania Derby, but not enough, in my estimation, to put him ahead of journalism or, of course, the division leader's sovereignty at this point. But he is a clear-cut third in the 3-year-old crop that is outstanding. There's nothing of the 3-year-old fillies that we saw last week that's going to put a scare into Torpedo Anna as she gears up for the Spinster and potentially a title defense in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. A so-so performance by Clico in winning the Cotillion, and an even more mundane performance, I thought, in the Seneca Overnight by last year's champion 2-year-old filly Immersive. None of those could step up in class and warm up the favorite Torpedo Anna in the Distaff division by my estimation right now. The Breeders' Cup preps this weekend hit high gear all around the country. Santa Anita, Churchill, Aqueduct with big ones around the country. And, of course, Delaware and Remington also with big cards coming up on Sunday. And as for our start of tomorrow, it was Englishman, Cherie DeVoe trainee, 2-year-old colt by Maxfield. Really impressive. First-time starter, 7 furlong winner at Churchill Downs. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I say so. That's how we play the game here on It's Official, and we'll do it all again in 7 days' time when we review a big weekend of racing. A little bit of late breaking news right before we recorded the podcast. HISA has suspended jockey Paco Lopez for 6 months for repeated violations of their whip rules. And so Paco Lopez, one of the more aggressive, controversial, and better friendly jockeys. If you're a bettor, you like Paco Lopez because he gives you everything he has on a horse, but he's gone over the line on several occasions. Of course, his original HISA suspension was when he struck a horse in the face in the stretch, and then after the race in the pull-up at Parx several months ago, I believe during the 2024 calendar year. So he was back under a provisional riding license, basically saying, don't screw up again. And while his violations this time are high in number, they're not as severe and egregious as the strike to the face of the runner. But Paco Lopez has gone over the line, though, in terms of number of chances that Heise is willing to give him. And they have served up a 6-month suspension of a very controversial rider. There's no question about that. Sometimes over the line in terms of the aggression, in physicality in his race riding, in judgment, and putting other jockeys in tough positions. And certainly what he's done with the crop has gotten him into a good deal of trouble with the whip violations. So Paco Lopez, sidelined 6 months. I don't know what side of the fence you stand on that, but to me, there's no place in the game for it. And so, if this was just a situation where it was overhand strikes or number of strikes, suspending somebody for 6 months, that seems to be overly egregious to me. But on top of what happened last year, where he put the welfare of a horse in danger and was overly aggressive and downright malicious with the way that he treated the horse at Parx last year, you've made your bed and now you sleep in it, I think, is kind of the way I look at that kind of judgment there. This isn't a first offense. This is a 20th offense kind of situation. So Paco Lopez is going to be out the next 6 months unless he is able to win an appeal of that suspension. As we know, with many jockey suspensions over the years, these sort of things kind of happened that way. His last suspension was reduced and he was brought back under this provisional deal. And now he's stepped the line of the provisional deal. We'll see what's next in the in the world of lawfare and what they do in terms of adjudicating said suspension. We'll talk more about that in the future as we get more details on it. On behalf of everybody with First Bet and Express Bet and my partner, Jeff Siegel, let's go get them surfing USA this Friday at Santa Anita in race number 3. Have a great week, everybody. Talk to you then.